Hey, Ralph.
Hi, Jim. How you doing?
I'm okay. Hey, do you hear that sound?
No.
Simon and Garfunkel, The Sound of Silence?
Yeah, that would be it.
That's kind of what we have today. We're not doing this at our lavish university studio because, well, frankly, it doesn't have any air conditioning. And we figure it's probably about 150 degrees. So we borrowed another venue. So no do music, but I could sing The Sounds of Silence if you want.
Yes, and perhaps you would sing it further and further away.
Okay.
But, Jim, it's interesting because we're pretty habituated to doing our podcasts, but every time we do one, I feel a little rise in my anxiety level.
You do? Well, I suppose that's, I guess that's normal, but, you've performed in front of crowds for years. I mean, years.
Well, I mean, it's only a little rise.
Okay.
And
So
somebody once said to me that, you have to be a little anxious to perform well.
Uh-huh. So this is what, a little bit of adrenaline, you think?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And, the thing is that a little bit is good, but a lot, and some people have a lot, is what we label as social anxiety or social phobia.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And that affects their life, their relationships, their daily routines,
Their jobs.
school, other activities. And it's really an unfortunate thing because while we know that some people have it and that there is either a genetic component or some families behaviorally pass on social anxiety.
Uh-huh.
We don't have a good separation on those yet. But some families, social anxiety seems to run in the family. Is it genetic? Well, maybe. Is it behavioral? Almost certainly.
Okay, so a learned kind of phenomenon. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't have the DSM-5 in front of me, but I understand that social anxiety or social anxiety phobia is a relatively common mental disorder. Maybe somewhere in the neighborhood of 20% or so of people who, in the walking around population, and it's particularly seen in teen populations.
Yeah, and the other thing that we see it particularly in, there are a lot of people who you could say, can you talk to 3 other people? Oh yeah, no problem. Can you talk to 5 other people? Oh yeah, no problem. Can you talk to an auditorium full of people? Oh no. And a lot of people have really, I don't know what you would call it, speech fear.
Hey, Ralph, can you walk across the room here on this imaginary 2x4 that I have laid out here? Actually, I'll make it a 2x6 for you, okay?
Okay.
Can you walk across the floor on my 2x6?
Probably not.
Well, there goes an example.
Well, no. Okay, let's say I can. I can walk across the 2x6.
Okay. Now, let's suspend the 2x6 up in the air a little bit.
Okay.
Like between the Niagara Falls, Ontario, and Niagara Falls, New York.
Definitely cannot do that.
Same 2x6, Ralph.
Same 2x6, yeah. And there's a very famous poster that a lot of our listeners may have seen. It shows guys making some of the first skyscrapers in New York City, and there's a hoist that's about 97 stories up, and these guys have a cable wrapped around the hoist, and they're all out on a beam.
I've seen that picture.
And they're sitting there eating their lunch.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I look at that, it gives me kind of queasy feeling, because it just looks like all you have to do is tilt yourself back a little bit, and then you fall off, and then the guy next to you who you grabbed falls off, and then the beam tilts. And
You know, that's a good point, because even your description of it, because I've seen the picture, but even just you talking about it gave me that queasy feeling in the pit of
Yeah.
my stomach, which, you know, is kind of interesting. We've talked about this before, that anxiety isn't just the emotion in your brain, the emotion in your head. It takes over your whole body, and we feel
Yeah.
it. We feel it in our shoulders, in our gut, in our legs, you know. So,
yeah, and you know, we see people blushing, heartbeat raising, trembling, sweating. I saw a guy who was going to go out and do a thing in front of a high school auditorium full of parents, including his and other visitors, and he had beads of sweat on his forehead like he'd just run a marathon. Just because he was so nervous about going out and doing his performance.
okay. So we do have the physiological components, physiological correlates. When you were reading that list, Ralph, I was thinking, that's a little bit, it could be a list for being in love, too. And,
It could be,
kissing your date on, good night. Read it again.
Blushing, fast heartbeat, trembling, sweating, upset stomach,
Well,
trouble
maybe not
catching
that.
your breath, dizziness or lightheartedness, feeling that your mind has gone blank, or in my case, blanker, muscle tension.
Yeah, okay. So if you're in front of your audience of 2 or 3 or 4 or 500, it really doesn't matter. They're all potentially debilitating, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. And as I said, it's with your example of the people in the on the beam, it didn't matter that I'm not looking at the beam. I'm just thinking about it. And so if I, as a person with social phobia, have to think about going out and giving a speech or giving a presentation, those things are probably going to visit me before I'm anywhere near
yeah.
the place
Yeah.
that I have to be, right?
And one of the things that we could say about that is you can expect that, particularly if you're not practiced. Now, there's a very strong practice effect, and I don't mean just practicing for your one speech, but the more you do things that help you overcome your social anxiety, or sometimes in the case of giving a presentation in front of an auditorium, it's performance activity, performance anxiety, which is kind of one of the branches of social anxiety.
Okay, yeah, so you can kind of script yourself out if you're going to do a presentation, going to do a TED Talk. Certainly they have people practice and practice and practice. But I think a lot of people have social anxiety over more simple things, like talking to somebody at a party.
Yeah. So, what happens then? Well, you may end up, because of social anxiety, it could cause low self-esteem, trouble being assertive, negative self-talk, hypersensitivity to criticism, poor social skills, isolation and difficult social relationships.
Okay, I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about a joke that Garrison Keillor made a number of years ago. Remember Garrison?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so he talks about the Norwegian bachelor farmers in some of his monologues, right?
Right.
And he says, the Norwegian bachelor farmer, usually will stare at his shoes when he's talking to you, but the outgoing Norwegian bachelor farmer, he will stare at your shoes. So I think that's that kind of shyness that you're
Yeah.
talking about. And when you're staying with the the party analogy. Hey, how you doing? Oh, okay. And some people get into their Eeyore mode.
So there are a number of things that we can do about this. First of all, get help early. Don't go from having social anxiety at 15 to having social anxiety at 50 without trying to get some professional help
Okay.
To intervene.
Okay. Staying with the party, if somebody talked to me about it, like I don't know how to talk to people, I would probably rehearse some scripts. I mean, how do you talk to people? If I wanted to talk to you at a party, Ralph, we know I've known each other for years and years, but if, I'm looking at this guy, I'm looking at you, you've got fish or something like that over your shirt, and it's kind of interesting, and so I might think, oh, there's an interesting fellow to chat with. How do you begin? Well, I might tell one of my clients, you just begin by saying, that is a really interesting shirt.
You could do that.
Where did you get that?
Yeah. Actually, I got that. I got that in Midland because I was looking for a koi shirt.
Look, that's the fish, right?
That's the fish. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And why were you looking for a koi shirt?
Well, it was a joke at a Halloween party.
Okay. But you see
I
how
was going to say I'm being coy.
But you see how it works.
Yeah.
It naturally comment on somebody's tie and where'd you get the tie, and lots of ties have symbolism. You could say, Jim, where'd it's a red and black tie. Where did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I got it because it's my school tie, and then continue to talk. So if you have a few of those sort of pre-rehearsed, right?
Yeah.
Sort of opening gambits.
And let me give our listeners a little bit of advice, and then maybe some ideas about 5 different things you could do. So don't drag on.
What does that mean?
Be brief, be to the point.
Okay,
Okay, so you go to a party.
That's an interesting shirt.
Yeah.
Okay.
But don't, elaborate for 5 minutes on how interesting the shirt is. Talk faster, speed up the tempo of your dialogue a little bit.
Okay.
Avoid polarizing topics. So, what do you think of the COVID restrictions? No, not a good opener.
No, that's okay. Probably avoiding politics would be a good a good non.
Politics and religion.
Religion, okay.
Show your emotions. Smile, frown. Don't use a monotone. Laugh at people's jokes, providing they're actually funny, unlike some of mine.
Have eye contact.
Be aware of your body language.
Okay.
And be a giver, not a taker.
That's the biggest one that when I work with teens and they're interested in perhaps meeting other people and enlarging their social group, they really don't know how to do it. And so we rehearse some of the things that we've just been talking about. And I don't know if it's inevitable, but they usually are takers or they focus on themselves.
Yeah.
Just it's almost like turning the gun on themselves in terms of, I go to school, but I'm not much of a student.
Yeah. So, if you come to every conversation with a growth mindset, you're looking to learn something from the other person. Doesn't have to be a huge thing, but so let me give you 5 things, and for our listeners, in case you don't realize this, Jim's wife Sheila is a professional storyteller. So here's a question you can ask to be an icebreaker. What's your story?
Okay.
Don't ask it as a challenge, but just, what's your story? Tell me more about yourself.
Okay.
So people have then permission to start telling you more about themselves, um, speak from the heart, share their life's journey, maybe talk about their dreams. Um, and that is a good opener for people who want. Most of us want to talk about ourselves.
Sure. Well, that's the first thing a therapist will ask. Tell me about yourself.
Yeah.
Now, that can be threatening, though, Ralph, because people, like, what do you want to know, as opposed to them telling them, just tell me anything.
So maybe another one that might be perceived as less threatening is, hey, what makes you smile when you get up in the morning?
My first cup of coffee.
Yeah. Well, how do you take it? You like it with cream and sugar, or do you take it black? Or so another one might be, what book has influenced you the most?
That's a pretty good question. I haven't
And
thought
if
of that.
if the person says, well, I don't read very much, then you can say, well,
How about a movie?
how about a movie? What do you think is a good movie?
Okay.
I don't watch very many movies, but I always like to look at a good one. What would you recommend?
Mm-hmm. So the person says, well, let's see, last movie I saw, I think, was Bambi. So there's something else. If you want to be interesting, it would be good for you to at least know what books you've enjoyed, what movies you've enjoyed, and what your own story is.
Yeah, because
somebody might come up and ask you those. Ralph might be at this party, and he's going to ask you those questions.
And it is reciprocal.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the things that you might start off with is, okay, what's your story? Mm-hmm. And the person might say blah 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 blah, and then they'll say to you, and what's your story?
Okay.
And you have to have an answer for that.
Right.
So what absolutely excites you right now? Business, home. I just had, well, I didn't have, but my family has a new great-grandson.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty exciting. Here's
Okay.
this little thing, and we go back in the same neighborhood. We've got grandma, daughter, son, and newborn great-grandson.
4 generations.
Four
in
generations.
one neighborhood.
One neighborhood,
near
yeah.
Toronto. Okay. Yeah. So that could, Hey, So what was the question? What?
What absolutely excites you right now?
Okay. Hey.
So you might get somebody who talks about their business or their classes or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I
just went to a massage therapist, and I'm pain-free for the first time in a little while. That excites me pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
How about you?
Suppose I didn't know you, Jim. And we're at this gathering, and I say to you, I'd like to know, what's the most important thing I should know about you?
Well, that's a good question, Ralph. I could tell you about my occupation. I could tell you about my creative work. But the most important thing that you should probably know about me is that I'm a warm, compassionate, empathetic human being.
Yeah. And, and from there,
Mm-hmm.
we have a beginning of a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So I might respond to that with, gee, I think I could use more compassion and empathy. How did you build your compassion and empathy over your life?
Well, I can tell you that I didn't indulge in a lot of social media.
Yeah.
And I talk to people. hear what their story might be, and I relate it to my own life. You know, you can tell me part of your story, and I can say, yeah, I can learn from that. You know, I can be a little bit more outgoing, and you know, like I know you. I know you're an outdoor person. You know that you find a lot of meaning. You know, for a hike in the woods, and so you know you have given me that as a kind of a model, and so you know I could say, just walking. Well, a few minutes ago we walked over to the coffee shop and got coffee, right?
Right.
And we had, I think, conversations with at least 2 or 3 people that we've never seen before. We'll never see again. But you know, that one guy with the cup. You know, how you doing?
Yeah.
You know, your conversation with the little girl with the flashing shoes.
Yeah, the light up shoes, and she was so proud of them, and she did a little dance for us to show where they lit up, and
her mom thought, I think her mom thought, well, instead of somebody seeing my kid as obnoxious, they see my kid the same way I do, as you know, creative and outgoing, and you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are things that I think demonstrate either empathy or compassion. Now we could have put on our game face and just, you know, I got this little kid in front of me, you know, hogging the coffee line, you know, that kind of thing. But no.
And, you know, the kid, instead of dancing in her light up shoes, could very well have grabbed onto her mother's leg and hid behind her and peeked out. You never know when you do those kind of things what reaction you're going to get.
Yeah.
But, you know, the thing is that the practice effect by doing them helps you to overcome your social anxiety.
Mm-hmm. You know, I think about some of the restrictions that the environment puts on us right now, or we put on ourselves. You know, the masks didn't help. You know, if I am going to talk to somebody, I'd like to get some feedback, and if all I can see is your eyes, then probably you know, you've got body language too. But I don't know how I'm really coming across.
Yeah.
And so if I'm kind of negative, if I engage in a lot of negative self-talk and I don't have a good self-esteem, I'm going to conclude that these things are not going very well, perhaps.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, one of the things that I saw, Jim, that I thought was very clever, although I'm not sure it was very effective as a mask, was a young woman a couple of months ago who had a mask that was cloth around the 4 sides.
Mm-hmm.
The center of it was transparent plastic film.
I've seen those, yeah.
So you could see her face.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you said something, she could smile at you, and so on and so forth, you know. And that I think was a good thing, although, as I say, I'm not sure how effective it was as a mask.
You know, one of the things, speaking of masks, I have not seen, at least around Mount Pleasant, very many people who are wearing face shields. Have you seen those?
No, I've seen some, but not very many.
Because those would be perhaps more interaction friendly, possibly. Or maybe the person with social anxiety really does want to hide behind the mask.
Yeah.
You know, that's
kind of like the Lone Ranger.
right. You know, there's another self-inflicted mask that a lot of people use, and I think they use it as a way of hiding, and that's their telephone.
Yeah.
I was at that same coffee shop. Sheila and I were at the same coffee shop yesterday or the day before, and there were 2 young ladies who were sitting, I think, at 90 degrees from each other. They weren't across from each other, but they were on their devices. They were on their telephones. And as far as I can see, there was no social interaction between the 2 of them, but there was interaction between them and their telephone. Now, that could be just a one-off, you know.
I don't think it is.
I don't think it is. I don't, think it is either.
And I think I think part of the thing is that if you look at high school students today, what the stats say is that a high school student spends between 7 and 8 hours on a screen during the course of any 24-hour period.
Yeah, now, is that inflated because of students now going to school virtually, or was that the case before school shut down?
I think it was the case before school shut down, but I don't have any good data on that.
Okay.
But, the thing is that people back in the day, before the advent of the computer screen, the television screen, the phone screen, people used to be more or less forced into interacting with each other.
I suppose, yeah.
So what you had basically was other people. And my thinking may be wrong, but I think the incidence of social anxiety is going to increase in the next 3 or 4 years based on what we've gone through in the last 18 months.
So that the isolation that some people experience in the last 18 months is going to carry over because of perhaps a lack of the ability to practice successful interactions.
You turn to screens, and then, okay, the pandemic is over or partially over, and you go out, and then somebody says, well, we need you to not work from home, we need you to come back to the office, and you come back to an office where there are 40 people, and you discover, gee, I don't like interacting with 40 people.
Yeah, okay, good point. Okay, so in terms of helping people who experience social phobias or social anxiety, talking to a therapist, is one thing. Having a growth mindset, and Peterson's work actually talks about this, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, and we'll put a link to some of his.
And Seligman talks about positive psychology, the need to be optimistic. So somebody who's suffering from social anxiety, who is forced to go to a get-together of some kind, may be saying, "Oh, this is going to be incredibly bad. I'm going to make a fool of myself, blah blah." But somebody who has learned optimism in their life may be saying, this evening may be an opportunity for me to meet that one person who is going to say something that's got some real meaning to it that will help me to improve my life.
Okay. Well, good ideas, Ralph. And we've looked at social anxiety, and we've come up with some suggestions for our listeners. Shall we pursue this a little bit more next week?
We could do that, yeah.
Okay, flesh it out, a little more. I think there's still some material that is left to cover.
Yeah, and one of the things that, some people with social anxiety will do is go to a physician and get prescribed some medication, which can help. A lot of people are tempted to self-medicate with alcohol or available
opioids of some kind.
Opioids or cannabis. Short-term help, but not maybe a great thing in and of itself.
Right, and in fact, alcohol and even cannabis can lead to depression, which on top of social anxiety was probably pretty debilitating. So we're not going to go there. But something that gives you that little. We talked earlier about that little adrenaline rush. So something that perhaps stimulates the dopamine receptors.
Yeah.
But and you've talked about this too. Besides something that stimulates the dopamine receptors that you can buy over the counter. A brisk walk outside,
Yeah.
does the same kind of thing, right? Or some exercises, yeah.
So, if I had to give a prescription, what I would say is if you are suffering from social anxiety, find one person you like and go for a walk with him or her, preferably in nature, and just practice talking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, practice talking. That's a...
Practice listening,
Mm-hmm.
and then when you know you've got a get-together of some kind to go to, work out a little kind of pre-get-together script in your mind.
Gotcha.
If he says that, I say this.
Mhm. Yeah, okay. Well, this was interesting, and I want to thank our listeners who have actually given us some of these ideas. And if anyone has heard this and has some questions or comments, feel free to engage with us. There are some ways of contacting us on either the Podbean or the Psych Takeaway or our Facebook account.
Yeah.
So until next week, this is Jim
And Ralph,
saying,
keep your stick on the ice
because we're all in this
together.